Hi, today I'd like to show you an easy way to make a really good looking, good sounding license plate guitar. First we start with two pieces of poplar wood right here. Get them from the local Home Depot, Revy, wherever. They're called 1x2s, but they're actually 3/4 by 1.5 inches. And they're fairly long. I think they're 4 feet long. So you need a couple of those, but that's all you need for wood. I'll put them out of the way. You take one of them and you make a neck. Like this. This neck here is 30 inches long, which is about as short as you want to go. You might want to make it 31 or 32. This is a really tight fit. And what I've done here, hopefully you can see, is I've notched the end for the tuners, and then I've drawn out the frets, and in my case I took a soldering iron and burnt them in using a square, like so. You can get the measurements from the internet, and you just measure them out. Make sure you use a square so they're straight. And you pick a scale. The scale I'm using here is 24-inch scale. That means from the nut here to the 12th fret, it's 12 inches. So theoretically, if you go all the way down here to where the bridge mark is, that's another 12 inches. The bridge is never exactly where it's supposed to be because of the thickness of the strings and the height of the bridge interfere with something called intonation. So it's always a little ahead or a little behind, or sometimes twisted a little sideways, depending on the instrument and the gauge of strings. Another way that you can find out where you want your frets is you can make a template. This template's just another piece of wood, but it was held up to like a regular guitar right at the nut, the edge of the nut, right down the center of the neck, and you just make a little mark on each fret and then use a square to create a template. Or you can also order stuff from the internet like this and make a template that way. This template is for 25 inches. Either way works just fine. This way, of course, costs a little more money, and we're talking about doing things on the cheap today. So that's really all you have to do to create your neck. Sand it a bit so nobody gets splinters. You don't want to take too much wood off, because when you're just using one piece of wood, you don't want to lose any tone. Wood is mass and mass is tone. So you want to keep as much wood on there as is possible. We're not going to put a fretboard on it or anything like that. We're going to keep it super simple, very primitive, because we're playing slide. That's all we really need. Now when it comes to the tuners, a good place to get tuners is from the repairman at your music store sometimes, because they replace a lot of inexpensive tuners that haven't hardly been used or anything. And because people like to swap them out for better ones, and they usually just leave them behind. So you can get them pretty inexpensively. Or you can buy them from Amazon and from other places. And I wouldn't spend too much money on them because they will work fine. And the other thing you have to be aware of is to make sure you know where you're placing them. And the other thing is what I just did there is wrong, because the string would be pulling on this, and it would be pulling the gear away from the worm, so this would slip. So you always want to make sure that you have the gear below the worm, so it's pulling into it, and then a cheap tuner will behave just fine. And the only other key is to make sure you come in 3/8 of an inch wherever you decide to put the tuners. They need to be at least an inch apart. If you made your neck longer, you can put them all on one side, or you can put 2 on the top, 1 on the bottom, or vice versa. It really doesn't make any difference. And the other thing you might want to do is reinforce them. So this is a 6mm drill. That's what I use for putting in just the hole, and that's fine. That's all you have to do. But if you do want to use the reinforcing washer, then the best thing to do is to get a reamer and just gently widen the hole until the washer fits. And then you'll end up with something that looks like this. Now this one has a very small nut bolt. So it has little retaining screws here. They're flat on the underneath side of the head. You don't want to use round ones because the string will slip off. And they just keep the string from slipping out of the groove. If you're using a bigger nut, because if you're playing slide, some people like to put a really big nut down here. This one here you can actually play fretless as well. If you had a nut, let's say this big, well, you wouldn't even need them because the angle down to the tuners would hold the strings in place. All right, so I think that's it for necks. So, license plate and box. License plate is usually, this is a vanity plate. You can get them at joke shops, stuff like that, or you can buy them online. They're a little more expensive online. Or you can use one from your old car, anything you want. Just make sure that they're really got a flat edge. That makes a big deal. And they're almost always approximately 6 by 12. So this is 6 1/4 by 12 1/4. I cut the 2 long pieces, and then these ones are 4 1/2 plus 1/4, so 4 3/4. And then I've obviously painted it, put it together with screws, drill everything first. You know, don't just put the screws in, things will split. And after you've drilled the holes and stuff like that, make sure you're clean in between. Before the joints, before you put them together, you end up with a gap because the act of drilling actually pushes the wood out a little bit. So you need to either sand or take a chisel or something and just make sure it's flat again. And then here, I just found the middle and then cut a notch for the neck. And the neck sits in here like this. Now if you're going to do it like this, you want to put a little piece of wood under here to reinforce things. And there's many ways of doing tail pieces. I'll show you a couple. Whoops. You can just make a little square plastic like that. This one's a little fancier. You can also use a hinge. A lot of people seem to like that. Or you can make another notch and go right through. This is sort of like, almost seems like this is considered a traditional sort of thing to do. If you do that, then you need some rivets. And you just drill a little hole and put the rivets in. Make sure they're not the long rivets, make sure they're short. It doesn't really matter what the diameter of the hole is as long as the string will fit through it. And that's that there. So far as you can see, you need very, very little to make one of these things. Now there are a couple tricks. Hopefully you're still paying attention, because there are a couple things you need to know about. Having done a lot of experimentation and a lot of things that didn't sound so good, one of the things that'll help it sound good. Oh yes, and I should mention, this is a 7/8 inch hole. I don't like I used to drill a hole in the top and put the jack in there, but now I prefer to do it down here. So what I do now is I make up one of these. This is a piezo, pretty big one. I think that's 20 millimeters. And this is a ground wire, which I'm going to need to strip. And this is the jack. The jack will go in one of these things. All the stuff you can make yourself. Well, not the jack, the piezo. So, what happens, this way you can see it, is the jack, after I'm done being incompetent here, jack goes through here, gets hooked up to this, and then the piezo is going to go under the bridge, and the ground wire is going to go be stripped and go somewhere around there. Now, here's the thing that I found out. If you just do that, it's going to be really hard to control the noise, the sound, the feedback. It's going to be really bright and really vibrating and everything. So what I've learned to do, right now I'm using tape like this. I'm sure you could use lots of other stuff, or cut a piece of cardboard, but I tape it all in, the neck included, except for the spot where this is going to go, because I actually glue this to the license plate with hot glue in the right spot. It's easy to mark out. I just measure up from there, draw a line on this, glue it. So I won't have the tape here, and I'll make a little notch, just a small one, for the connections here, so they aren't being pressed into the wood. But I'll just make a small notch for that. So that way, this is pressing on this, and this is pressing on wood. So you're getting the tone of the plate, but you're getting the tone of the wood as well. And but you're not getting all this other vibration from all the wood all the way around it. And that seems to be the best way to get a sound. When it comes to the back, just about anything will do. This is some kind of particle press board that I found lying around. But, you know, just cut it to size. And use enough screws that it's not going to vibrate or anything. I haven't ever had to put any padding with the back. I haven't put any vibration there. With the front as well, you can see on this one, I only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have found with the tape underneath, and it's underneath here too, that that's really all I need. I've had ones where I put in more screws and ones where I put in less. That seems to be a good number. And I just use these little 1/2-inch ones. And I drill the hole in the plate first, so they aren't twisting the plate when you put them in. They just go right through the plate. And that way they go just into the wood. And I pre-drill that too, different size though. I hope that was helpful. I'm sure I left out some stuff, so just ask me any questions in the comments. I'd be happy to answer them. Have a great day.